So a couple weeks ago, I put out a few shorts that was about a series that I wanted to start where you guys submit either an email or a direct message and I react to your current financial situation. The idea was that there's financial lessons that we could all take away from each other. Well, we got our first email. Remember that this is all going to be with a positive lens. This is not to make fun of anyone's situation or to make them feel like they're stupid or that they made a mistake. This is all about learning from one another and building a community where we can share each other's experiences and learn from them. And I don't want to forget that this is not financial advice by any means. If you feel like you need professional help, please go seek professional help. This is for the purposes of entertainment and education, where I put myself in this financial position and just say what I would do. So without any real direction or plan or script, I'm just going to read the email and get some notes down, and we're going to talk about it. Hey Alex, loving the content, keep it up. Thank you. I want to do an end of year review of where I'm at financially and was curious what you thought. I feel like I'm in a good place, but can't help the feeling that I should be doing better. I'm 31 years old and make $61,000 a year. My job does pay end of year bonuses, but they're not guaranteed. I saved up $3,500 that I keep in a high yield savings account, but I only save when I can. My 401k through work is about $7,000 with a 3% match that vests over 3 years. That is important. Other than that, I don't really invest in stocks or bonds. I recently bought a new car with a couple grand down and financed the rest. My loan balance is close to $41,000 at about 6%. I checked KBB, Kelly Blue Book, and my car is worth about $37,000. My biggest purchase so far was my house. The last time I got it evaluated was when I refinanced a few years ago. It was worth close to $325,000. I have a 3% mortgage and still owe $249,000. By the way, I appreciate you rounding up to the nearest thousand. It really helps. Oh, and I don't have any credit card debt, but I do have some student loans. $27,000 at 3.75%. I just started repaying those this year. I don't really spend much on going out or going on vacations, but I do spend a lot on my guilty pleasure, which is golf. You know, I've recently been wanting to get into golf. You and I should talk later. I sometimes do a monthly budget, but I struggle with being consistent. Thanks for the time, and I'll just say Mr. Anonymous. Right off the bat, let me say that you're doing pretty well with your salary, because for your age group, I believe you're above the national average, which is in the high 50s. Now, remember that this is my perspective as if I was in this financial position. I'm looking at $3,500 in savings, and that makes me uncomfortable. Because an emergency fund that's adequate is 3 to 6 months, sometimes even 9 months of your monthly expenses, which, if you consider where inflation has taken us with rents and mortgages and everything across the board, I don't think $3,500 gets you there. Now, as for the 401k balance at $7,000, I think that's actually okay. I'm looking at these numbers here on a website called Empower, and the median 401k balance is $12,169 for the age group 30 to 35. So $7,000 is definitely below that median, but like I said, it's okay. As for the car situation, that was last valued at $37,000 on KBB. You still owe 41 grand on the auto loan, which means that that loan is underwater or upside down. What the car's worth is not enough to cover that loan should you have to liquidate that asset, right? So that is a bit of a concern, especially because that auto loan is at 6%. There's a really good chance that you overpaid for that vehicle or that you purchased it at the peak market prices, which a lot of people did, right? And that's pretty indicative of why that car value might have fallen below what you still owe on your auto loan. And that's not even considering natural depreciation, which could very well be a contributor to why this happened. You also made a comment that you put a couple grand down and you still owe about $41,000 on that loan. I'm going to assume that you paid north of $45,000, which, believe it or not, puts you right around what most people were buying cars at over the last couple of years, which the average was around 48 grand. Now, you did mention that you have some student loans around $27,000. 3.75 is on the lower end of the spectrum of interest rates. If you consider things like your car loan or a personal line of credit, and you compare it to when mortgages were 3%, 2.5%, you're right there. So it's manageable. And with a salary of 61 grand, I'm assuming that you put those student loans to good use, that you went into a good line of work that at some point would pay off. And look, you have no credit card debt. That is an exceptional amount of freedom in terms of finances when you don't have 24% debt accruing every month. The fact that you don't have credit card debt means that you're in a really good financial position relative to a lot of other people. Now let's talk about the house, because I think there's a risk here that you fall into the trap of being house rich but cash poor. And the reason why I say that is if you look at the asset side of your personal balance sheet, you add up your savings, your 401k, your car, and your house, the total assets is valued at $372,500. But if you consider that the house is valued that high, it's worth about 87% of your total assets, which means that the majority of what constitutes your net worth is tied up to your house. With that said, though, if you look at your mortgage, you have a 3% rate. I'm assuming that you refinanced during the COVID years where they were handing out mortgage rates at 2.25 or whatever, like it was candy. You have a 3% rate, which is great. Although your house constitutes a lot of your net worth right now, the terms that you bought that house with are pretty damn good. And speaking of net worth, if you add up your asset side, which is $372,500, and you add up your liabilities, which is your student loans, your auto loan, your mortgage, that totals out to $317,000. Net worth is assets minus liabilities, which gives you a total net worth of $55,500. That alone right there, the fact that you have a positive net worth, that you actually are worth something, is a testament to how you're doing financially. I mean, you're in a really good position just on that fact alone. But I do want to introduce my personal concept of how we should treat things like a car. So, in the traditional definition of assets, yes, your car is an asset. But if you think about the fact that it depreciates rapidly and it's also subjected to weather, accidents, and theft, I see it less of an asset and more as a tool, right? So if you were to remove your car from the assets column, but you keep your auto loan there because that's debt, that's contracted debt that you will always be obligated to pay. You remove the 37 grand from your current net worth of 55 grand. Let's call it 35 just to make it easy. That goes all the way down to 20K. So if this were me, this is what I would be doing moving forward. I would really make it a goal to reduce the percentage of my net worth that is tied up to the house and the car, and really focus on the savings, 401k, stocks and bonds portion of this. The actual investable assets that are not your personal residence and not your car. The $3,500 in savings, I would make it a personal goal to increase that to a level where I have 3 to 6 to even 9 months of expenses covered. And you put that all in a high yield savings account, which are still paying 4% rates, and you're gonna get a decent return. I'm also making it a personal goal to taking advantage of the 401k. Not only is it tax advantaged, so it's a great retirement vehicle, but you also get 3% matching from your employer, which is pretty good, even if it vests over 3 years. You never know how long you're gonna stay somewhere. So the 401k balance, 7 grand, I'm trying to increase that to fall in line with those median levels, right, for that age group. The 30 to 35 was roughly around 12 grand. That's my goal. And then I'm looking to grow those assets beyond just a 401k and your high yield savings account. I'm looking at a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA. I'm looking at a brokerage account. I'm looking at HSAs. I'm looking at 529s if you have children. I'm looking at all the different avenues that you can start building wealth in investable assets like stocks, like bonds, and exposure to real estate. For me, the name of the game would be to reduce the percentage of my net worth and assets tied up with my car and my personal residence and shift those percentages to things like stocks, bonds, commodities, and real estate. And I do apologize for this one if you can hear them. And if anyone watching is questioning why I don't like to have a lot of net worth tied up with my personal residence, it's because what entails a personal residence investment, right? If you're trying to keep that property up, you are paying for maintenance, you are paying for taxes on the property, you are paying for any emergency repairs that go beyond regular maintenance, and you're paying for insurance. And of course, there's the very natural desire to live in a space and do things to it to make it more comfortable, either expand it or add a pool or add new cabinetry. All of that stuff adds up. And in the event that you want to take a personal residence and turn it into this nest egg of net worth and assets, you have to liquidate it, which real estate, physical real estate, is not very liquid, especially the place that you live in. To sell that property would mean that you now have the problem of where the hell do you live now? I did want to make a brief comment about the type of debt that you currently have. It's a mortgage, an auto loan, and student loans, all of which have moderate to low interest on them, which is really good. Like I said, the fact that you don't have credit card debt puts you in a great position where you're a little more free to move around and to spend money and invest money where it needs to go, not to some credit union or to some credit card company. The student loans, hopefully you're properly leveraging that education you paid for to increase your salary and your professional path. The auto loan for $41,000. Yes, it's underwater, but if your plan is to keep that car until the wheels fall off, well, then you're getting a level of utility that's hard to measure. It's not just dollars at that point. And your mortgage is at 3%, which for a lot of places, that was rock bottom in terms of interest rates. And you used it to have a personal residence. You are a homeowner, which not a lot of people get to say they are at 31 years old. So my point is, the presence of debt isn't alarming. It's not some red flag, because hopefully you are getting utility out of each of these three pieces of debt. But here's the component that's missing from your email that I needed, and that is what your monthly budget looks like. What is the cash coming in? What is the cash going out? Because the debt here, although it's manageable and it's not life-threatening, it can collapse on itself if that cash coming in isn't enough to meet cash going out. In other words, you're living paycheck to paycheck. Something happens to you and the savings is at $3,500, then those debt obligations start to pile onto one another. And if you are living paycheck to paycheck, that would be my next question. What are your expenses? What are you spending on that goes beyond the assets and liabilities column? Because those two things are a pretty good picture, an overall picture of your financial position, but it's not everything. So if you ask me, I think you're in a great place. I think you're in a really solid financial position where you own your home, you have a really good salary, you have some savings, you have retirement, and the debt on paper seems manageable. Still, if this was me, my next goals for 2024 would be to reduce the percentage of my assets, that is my home, that is my car, and really ramp up the savings, the emergency fund, the stocks, the bonds, and some exposure to real estate. Those are investable assets that you can guarantee will appreciate over time, where with your house, it will appreciate at some point, but you have to consider things like maintenance, emergency costs, insurance, and just general upkeep. Guys, I apologize if this video was all over the place and it had no real plan or direction. This was the first time that I'm doing this for this series, but I like this. I like this a lot. I think it's a hell of a lot of fun, and I hope that each of you has something to take away from this. Mr. Anonymous, thank you so much for being the brave soul with the first submission for this series. You contributing to this, I think, will kick this thing off and give people the confidence to share their experience too. I hope this helps somebody, or at the very least get some conversation started. As always, thanks for watching. Until next time, take care of yourself, and best of luck.